Long, long ago, in the triumvirate of the church, state, and business or commerce, we looked as human beings to the church to solve social ills. That went on for a pretty long time. And then the locus of control shifted over more toward government, which was good because that kept us from having 6-year-olds working 14 hours and, for the most part, people standing in toxic vats of goo, things that were not good for us in terms of sustainability. And of course, that process continues on today, and it's something that works with varying degrees of success, and it's different in countries around the world. And business has always played a part in that power dynamic. I think these days that we're looking more and more toward business to solve ills. I think we look at the church and government, and maybe we question their ethics and values. And they're probably straining under the, burgeoning, the weight of their burgeoning structure and power base, and it's difficult for them to focus on things that we want. And, they're also broke in a lot of cases, and so just out of pure necessity, we're looking for other places. And I think a new model is emerging to fill that void, and that's the socially conscious business. There are kind of two paths for that. There are the philanthro-capitalists. I would say some of Brian's ventures fall into that area. They come together to solve a social ill with the hope of making a profit really for sustainability, because if you can't be profitable, you're really not going to be very sustainable. Often those are front-end loaded with philanthropy, which kind of makes them a hybrid model between an NGO and a business. And then there is also the socially responsible business. Those are people who convene to make something. In the case of New Belgium, of course, that would be to ply the ancient craft of making beer. And while they do that, they are trying to make sure that they're aware of their externalities. I couldn't sit here and tell you that we are accounting for all of our externalities, but we are trying to make sure that the impact that we make on the planet is as light as it can be and is ever sort of progressing at being elegant in its process. And we also want to make sure that the relationship that we have with our coworkers and with our customers and with the communities that we do business in is one that is respectful. And we're trying to make sure that it's playful and joyful as well. So, at New Belgium, we have a vision. I like to keep notes kind of at hand, so if I freak out, I can look down and see approximately where I am. We're actually going to be 20 next Tuesday. And so, we've learned a thing or two. Thank you. Thanks. We've learned a thing or two along the way, and I want to share those with you. And the first thing is we have at New Belgium what we call a vision. The vision is kind of the bucket. One little piece here, I tend to take little strolls down side paths. One of the things I've also learned, this wasn't part of my big learnings, is that language matters, and that a vision to me and a mission to you and core values to you, if you can't get any alignment around that, that's kind of a problem. So our vision is the bucket, and inside of that is our purpose, which is for us our guiding star. The thing that we are on this planet to do in the long haul, the thing that we'll never totally accomplish, but that guides the direction that we go in. And our vision is to operate a profitable brewery which makes our love and talent manifest, which is simple and not easy. But I'll tell you, 20 years of this, I am floored how often I think, yep, what's the choice? It all sort of boils down to being loving and being excellent at what we do. And that part about love, we squirmed a little. I'm up in front of my coworkers making a pitch for love, and they're like, yeah, they're thinking of Eros, of course. And I think it's important that corporations talk about love because, we spend a hell of a lot of time at this thing called work. And I don't know about you, but it's getting to seem more so. And even for millennials, they're better than we are at multitasking and sort of blending their work and their life in a way that allows for flexibility. But regardless, we spend a lot of time at it. And if it doesn't feel like the people that you work with have your back, and they care about you, and they're interested in your well-being, and if it doesn't feel there's this aspirational sense that we're going to be great, I don't know why we do it. I mean, I know why we do it, but it is a paycheck that you could get in a lot of different places. And I would encourage people to look at their own milieu and say, does it fit some very basic criterion? Because if it doesn't, there are lots of places to get paychecks, and there are lots of ways to make the place you get a paycheck feel consistent with your soul. So that's one of the things that we've learned. We also have a set of core values and beliefs. When Jeff and I started the company, before we ever made a batch of beer, we went on a hike in Rocky Mountain National Park. We took our notebooks along with us and we sat down and we came up with 4 core values and beliefs. And those were to make world-class beer, to promote beer culture and the responsible enjoyment of beer, to be environmental stewards, and to have fun. I think it's kind of embarrassing or hilarious, depending on the day, that we hadn't yet made any beer, but we decided we were going to make world-class beer. But here we are 20 years later, and there's no denying that we make world-class beer. So, so that's one of those things that you decide for yourself, who do I want to be, and you get that opportunity to be it. I also think it's hilarious, and there was a sort of big blind spot for us. You'll notice in those first 4, there was nothing about customers, and there was nothing about our coworkers. We didn't have either one of those, so it hadn't yet even occurred to us to be concerned about those. So a few years after we got some of those, we decided it would be a good idea to take another stab at this. And by that time, we were fully involved in a way of operating that I'll describe here in a minute. And so we got all of our coworkers together. That's not hard to do when you have beer and you have food. We always have food when we have beer when we get together, because for us, that's what it's about. It's about beer and food and human beings coming together to make their love and talent manifest. So we put together these core values and beliefs. This is our map. It's our expectation. We talk about this all the time. Occasionally I say to my coworkers, just in case you're wondering, I don't have Alzheimer's. I remember that I've talked about this before, but for us, this is key to company perpetuation, to legacy building, to joy, to happiness. You have to keep reminding people that if you want community, you have to work for community. If you want to have fun, you have to be sure that you bring the right kind of energy to the place to be able to do that. So every one of my coworkers is charged in their annual planning of their own work for the year, which all of us do and all of us can look at, with making sure that they focus on at least 2 of these every year and sort of having a plan for how they're going to particularly attend to them. We also have a mission. It is our big stretch as a company, and so we don't talk about that with people outside of the organization. I'd have to do one of those look into the light things with you. But it is the time-bound, measurable thing that we do that inspires us to feel like we are growing our enterprise, providing opportunity, being consistent with who we want to be, doing something else big. So that's that. And then we learned about the power of transparency and trust and relationship and community by the practice of open book management. I was going through the mail in about '94, and one of those quarterly paperback book things came out, and it was, I never get things like that because I'm terrible about returning the books I don't want. But one of the books was The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack, who is the father of the open book management movement. And I thought, okay, I'll do this. I'm sure I got 30 books that I never wanted just to get that one book. But I was a little nervous about it, but I'm from a liberal family, and I wanted to figure out, Jeff and I were running this business, and we thought if we were ever going to have a vacation together, we're going to need to figure out some way to really lean into this thing collectively. So I read the book. We've had a retreat every year since the very first year at New Belgium, and I gave my coworkers a quiz. I said, okay, we took in $100. Out of that $100, how much did we spend on raw materials? How much did we spend on labor? And how much did we spend on the other things that a business has to have? And at the end, they had us taking $60 home, which for those of you in this room who run businesses, that's hilarious too. So, I would kill for a 60% net profit. It's just really not, it's not general in an organization. So the knowing laughs are people who know what I mean, I think. So we jumped in. We kind of jumped over that trust divide and said, okay, we're doing that. All of my co-workers know exactly where the money goes. The one thing we don't talk about is salaries because nothing good comes of that. But they also, so we did that. And then I went to an NCEO, National Center for Employee Ownership Conference, and I heard Corey Rosen, who's the executive director of that organization, talk. And he said, opening the books to people and not giving them ownership is like inviting them to smell the dinner but not letting them eat, which was for me just like, ugh, I feel terrible about that. And I had been kind of looking for vehicles to do something. So we started with a phantom stock plan, and a couple of years later we ended up going to a we started with a phantom stock and deferred compensation are the same thing. And then we, in 2000, went to an ESOP plan. And so my coworkers own 41% of New Belgium. So they are my business partners in this thing that we do, which I feel very good about. This is a picture of us at our retreat. That's Planet Bluegrass in Lyons. We've had our annual retreat there every year. We bring everyone together. We're 400 people now. We get together, we have a process for how they drive our strategic planning. They know what our mission is, they know what our 3-year plan is, and they say, in small groups, we have 6 or 7 different issues that we want to talk about with everyone. They get together in those groups and they talk about what it is we should be thinking about as we're putting the annual plan together. So they are totally involved in the business of running the business because we're also trying to make sure that we are pushing decisions into the right places. So this has been incredible for us. The combination of transparency and trust and ownership and what we call high involvement culture, which is being expected to value the values and to participate in the business of running the business. I had no idea when we started this how powerful this would be and how much I feel a connection with my coworkers around this thing we do. So I'm a wild enthusiast about that. So we were going along for many years, probably until about, we're in 2011, until about 2000 or so, doing our thing. And, we would talk about it some, but not all that much. And we realized that we were squandering opportunity. that we make a splash in the thing that we do, but we were really ignoring the ripple. And that's a shame, because if one of the things we're doing is trying to use entrepreneurial ventures, small businesses, as, if we're looking to those to say, we've got big issues here, and we need to figure out how to galvanize some love and some talent and some energy around them, we need to be telling our story more. So this started a process for us of beginning to just kind of, talk about what we were doing. We've been doing philanthropy for years. We've been doing things inside the business for years, but we weren't talking about them. And this kind of goes back to that philanthrocapitalism thing. Customers are probably not going to have a lot of opportunity to talk with Brian and his folks at EnviroFit about the incredible work that they're doing on greenhouse gas emissions and just quality of life, especially in third world countries. But we have many, many, many opportunities to talk to our customers over beers about what it is that we do. And we hope that in doing that, or in coming here, or in any of the other numbers of things that we do, that we are sowing seeds for change. Because I don't want to squander this opportunity. I'm the luckiest woman in the world, and I want to be sure that the things that we do that can be contagious have the opportunity to, to go forth and multiply. So, we started sort of making that happen. As a slight aside, there's an the research we read about millennials, they really want the power of their purchasing power and their where they're working. They want those things to be pretty consistent with, their basic value set. And so we see hope in this arena as well. And, I think we see more and more socially conscious businesses out there, and we think that's reflective of that trend. So these next 3 slides kind of show you a little bit of the evolution of our going from the splash to the ripple. This one here is just sort of emblematic of our boys in their bubble. And, this is where New Belgium has been investing money. This is, $12, $20, $22 million of processed water treatment from which we are able to produce about 15% of our energy. And with philanthropy, we've moved from just straight up giving money to getting much more focused about that. We're currently members of 1% for the Planet, which is, I'm on the board, where it's an organization where companies commit to giving 1% of their revenue, not their profit, their revenue, because profit is a pretty manipulable number, and we wanted to sort of take the people at the top who were really serious about this investment in changing the world. So that's been great for us. And here we're moving further into that transparency and ripple work. We did a life cycle assessment of a 6-pack of Fat Tire, which essentially tells you where all the bad things live. And it's published on our website. We've published it in magazines. We speak about it at conferences with our brethren in the industry, because again, we feel like, that's how you move the needle on things, is to really become transparent about them and really, get the message out there in the world. And we've also become more involved in collaborations like Fort Zed here in our own Fort Collins, which all of you, I'm sure, are familiar with, so I won't go, given that we're running late, I won't go into detail. And then we've also turned up our advocacy. We are funding a program for the Colorado River Basin with a couple of other companies because healthy watersheds is one of our areas of interest. And you know, again, this was kind of one of those places where we said, are we squandering opportunity? We can weigh in on things that matter. In addition to this, we're working with B Lab and B Corp. Those B Corp is an idea that's not yet fully formed, and we don't know that we will ever be a B Corp. But it's a group of people who are working in states around the U.S. to change the corporate governance structure laws to enable a corporation that would identify itself as a B Corp, and in their fiduciary responsibility as directors of a board of directors of a company, they are then obligated to look at a pre-identified group of stakeholders so that you can have the environment and employees and communities in there. Because the way corporate governance works right now, if you are a director on a board of directors and you do things that are contrary to building maximum financial return for shareholders, you can be in trouble. Your shareholders can sue you for that. And that's kind of crazy, you know, that's one of those unintended consequences. Well, I think it was actually intended consequences, but that's another talk. So that's something that we're working on. We may never use it, but we think it we don't know yet. We just haven't decided. But we think it matters, and so we're spending time on it. Another thing that we're spending time on is ASBC, the American Sustainable Business Coalition, because at this point there's kind of one voice in the United States for business, and that's the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And they have a different agenda. That's another talk too. It's not my agenda. And I want my agenda to be represented, especially in Washington, D.C., but also in state houses across the land. And Jen Orgolini, who's a rock star, great friend of mine and a longtime co-worker, was in Washington, D.C., where she met with Congress people who said, oh my God, we never hear from people like you. We think that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce represents all business. And clearly there are a lot of us out here who want to do the right thing. And we need some better mechanisms for that. So that's another area that we're working on at New Belgium. And then here's this. And this has been incredibly freeing for us because it allows us to admit that it's a process and that we don't have it all nailed at once, and to have that kind of relationship of truth with our customers, with communities that we're in, and to sort of say, okay, we know now, where we're doing better. Let's talk about areas where we, have low-hanging fruit and work to do. It really, when we took that mind shift and went from, let's just talk about the good things we do and skip the stuff that we don't like so much, it was really powerful for us as an organization. So, for me, one of the huge gifts and surprises, happy surprises about doing this work is that we get to take profits and do things that are really consistent with who we want to be and how we want to show up in the world. And I never expected that in the beginning. And it's been just absolutely joyful to be able to live my life and be a part of my corporation's life and have those feel like they are congruent with one another, and that what I do in both spheres of my life really equally matter and mesh in a way that I feel proud of. So my coworkers they bring me to tears. I don't think there's anyone from New Belgium here. I saw a lot of us in your thing, and I was a little embarrassed, like, well, we're late. Maybe we could just skip the New Belgium thing since you've seen so much of it already. They blow my mind. I cry in front of them regularly because I just am so impressed with the work that they do. And We're looking ahead at perhaps investing in some philanthrocapitalism, looking at issues that we think are important and seeing if we can seed some money for things that aren't directly related to our business, because we're already doing that, but in some areas that we think are meaningful. So that's what we're up to at New Belgium. It's a beautiful day. I hope you all get an opportunity to get out there and enjoy it. And I thank you so much for taking the time to hear our story. Appreciate it.